Okay, welcome everybody to this video for another video with TCLi Advisory. My name is Fadi Jawdat Hindi. I'm the founder and the managing partner for the firm. I'm delighted today to be interviewing and meeting with a good friend of mine, who's somebody who's become a good friend of mine over the past few months, Skipper, who we're going to get a chance to talk to, get to know a little bit better. Skipper joins us as a senior principal, and he's going to be leading the design practice for TCLi in the coming months and hopefully the coming years. And we're going to talk a little bit about why design and why, I think design thinking is romanticized, and it's there's a lot of people probably selling and talking about design thinking. I think where Skipper and I have had a meeting of the minds and a meeting of the hearts is that we think about design on a much more basic, foundational, rudimentary level, where for us, design is at the center of everything that we do. Even though my roots are an engineering background, I think your roots, is it liberal arts or is it liberal arts? Yep. So even we're coming from two ends of the spectrum, at the end, what unifies us is design. And it's not necessarily design thinking. It's beyond just design thinking in the way that it's, being marketed and romanticized. It's more about the way we approach our day-to-day life. We apply design principles to say, is this the best way to do it? Is there a better way? How can we simplify? How can we streamline? And design is really at the core of everything that we do, whether it's engineering, whether it's business, or whether it's liberal arts. Yep. So join us in this episode. We're going to talk to Skipper. We're going to talk about, we'll take a look and discuss some of his background and what has brought him to design and the current juncture. And we'll also talk about why we are fortunate and lucky to have Skipper join us at TCLi. And we'll talk about what we are going to be doing with, you'll be joining me for the first time because I don't know yet what Skipper wants to do with design at TCLi. So I'm super excited to hear his views on that. And then we'll just see where the conversation takes us. And just like I say with a lot of my videos, I think the best videos are the unscripted one. This is an unscripted video. So we're just going to see where the conversation takes us. And I'm sure it's going to be an amazing conversation. So Skipper, tell us about Skipper. No, seriously. Tell us who you are. Tell us about your background. Yeah. I think, one of the things that we hear from people that engage with TCLi, they want to know who we are. Yeah. They want to know our stories.
Well, I think, thank you for the introduction at the beginning. I think that there is something really important about the way that we think about design and how that gets positioned, and especially right now in the year 2025. But to back up, my academic background is actually I didn't go to design school. And that's a little bit of my own dirty little secret that when people ask me about that, I feel guilty because I feel like maybe I didn't get the proper training. However, after having almost 15 years of industry experience, I'm fully confident that I have the necessary experience to talk broadly about product strategy and design. So I went to school. I have a double major in English literature and playwriting. Okay. And I think that that's important because if you know how to tell a story, it doesn't matter if it's a visual story or a written story or an oral story, they're still component parts. So you have to string them together, build a climax, build a narrative. And I think that's really important for how design is just considered.
Fascinating. Playwriting? How did you even come up with that, going for that major? That sounds like amazing.
Well, I think for me, playwriting was interesting in that I wanted to be able to create stories and use people, either amalgams from my real life or, figments of my imagination. They're all figments of my imagination, but to actually move a story along. So it's almost like a self-propelled design in a way, because I wasn't reliant on ingredients from other sources. So that's one thing that I think has helped me in the way that I think about design, because it's not just about visuals, it's not just about colors, it's also about words and intent and what's the underlying purpose.
Were you not worried about, am I going to find a job when I graduate?
Well, I guess
for coming from a Middle Eastern parents, like background with Middle Eastern parents or whatever.
Yeah.
I think you have a half Asian background too.
Right.
They drill into you. Oh, you got to be a doctor. Oh, you got to be a lawyer. Or whatever,
oh, there were very high
engineer,
expectations.
right?
Yeah, they're very high expectations, and I think from that East Asian parentage. So I'm half Korean and half Irish, and so I make a number of jokes about that. In that, both cultures. With a certain amount of drinking or party going, like to break out in song, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
True for Irish and Korean. Right. Karaoke or pub songs. They have an extreme love of cabbage as a food
That's right.
item.
That's right.
And a variety of other things. Anyway, so I think one of the things that I thought about in school wasn't actually the job market, but it was actually my use of time. And because I was doing so much reading and writing, what I did for my work study is that I sought out design jobs. So by the time I graduated from university, I had as strong a writing portfolio as I did a design portfolio. So I ended up, even though I've done writing on and off throughout my career, I ended up working as a designer.
Do you remember some of those design projects from college?
From college? Yeah. I mean, it was everything from laying out the student newspaper to we had a literary magazine. For a while, I worked for student publications. So almost everything that happened in the event center was something that I worked on.
Okay.
And it was sort of part of the reason why I got the job is because I was a writing major. In addition to doing the design, I could also do some of the writing work as well.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yep.
So, okay, very cool. So English literature and playwriting. And then what was your job out of college?
So
what was your first job out of college?
Sure, my first design job out of college was I was working for .com.
Okay. And you're West Coast. You were living on the West Coast.
No,
before,
I was
right?
in Texas at the time.
Okay. All right.
So I was working for .com and basically doing XHTML markup for them.
Okay.
Designing the editorial pages, illustrations, things like that. Quickly moved to New York City. Where I worked at a variety of companies. Some notable names from there include Media Bistro, PBS Frontline, even though they're actually produced out of Boston's WGBH PBS station, and then Fjord. I was there for over 5.5 years.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and how was interesting? So you went from Texas to New York. This is like New York, like.
Yeah, we lived in Manhattan.
In Manhattan, so this is all the hustle and bustle and the Broadway and blah blah blah. That's interesting. That's quite a change, right?
Yeah, it's a very big change, and I would say that at the time, my wife and I were thinking about, are we going to go to the West Coast or are we going to go to New York? And part of what really cemented the deal for me is upon visiting New York, it just felt like no other city that I'd ever lived in because of the mass transit. Because of some of the things that a lot of people talk about with New York City being a place where you feel like you're part of the same team, even if you're all rushing off in different directions. I think that's one of the assumptions that people make about native New York Cityans, that they're always in a hurry and they'll never help you. But the reality is that if you ask someone for help, they will always offer directions or they will always give you help as long as you're very concise and brief about the thing you're asking for.
As long as you do it in a hurry.
That's right.
That's right.
Hey, which way is 3rd Avenue? 3rd Avenue's that way. Thanks. That's it. It's really simple.
Very cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you lived in New York. And how was the experience with Fjord specifically? Because I worked for Accenture for several years or Energy Consulting back then. And I know they added Fjord after I'd left, and I think right there is kind of like, I think the trigger for why TCLi and Skipper are joining forces is because somebody knew at some point that look, this is important enough that it's got to get its own focus.
Yeah.
So how was the experience with Fjord?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I can probably make this statement about most every place that I've worked. But when I was at Fjord, I met some of the smartest people, the hardest working people that I've ever come across. And just for context, I joined right after the Accenture acquisition.
Because Accenture bought them.
That's right.
They completely bought it. And it was a Can you tell us a little bit about Fjord, just for for people that might not know who they are?
Yeah. So Fjord is most well known in the world for standing up a studio offering around service design. So lots of workshops, lots of facilitation, and actually it's the first time that I came into the service design paradigm.
Yeah.
I came in as a visual designer to begin with, but became very well acquainted with this facilitative methods as well as some of those very specific service design practices.
Okay.
Yep.
And I know, like you and I, as I said in the intro, you and I connected on like different planes,
Sure.
like different levels. When we started thinking about like design in the abstract, would you? And I haven't researched Fjord like heavily to know, but I'm just curious. When you compare it to like, for example, Frog design or IDEO or Gray or something similar, where does it fit on that spectrum?
I mean, I would say that it's
equivalent.
They're definitely on the same level.
Okay.
I mean, one would say that the ecosystem is a bit of a hazy pinpoint of dots. But I think that they operate in the same league, which is why Accenture was so hip on acquiring them. And as we've seen in the news in the past 8 years, Accenture's been on quite a M&A kick,
right?
Merger and acquisition kick. So I think they've been shopping around looking for lots of different kinds of capabilities that they can sell. Fjord being one of them, Droga5 being another.
Yeah.
So lots of different really focused offerings that help cement their own portfolio of services.
Yeah, and again, for those of you that are not familiar with some of these names, IDEO, Frog Design, Fjord, they're well known for like industrial design. Some of them are known for industrial design.
Say Frog is for sure, yeah.
Frog, right?
Yep.
And I think they designed the Apple mouse, like the original Macintosh 1982 mouse that's got like a single button, where everybody criticized, and it became kind of like the standard for Apple as they move forward. But they're, I think the beauty of those houses and what they do is the kind of like they remove all the noise and they try to get down to the core of the issue that you're trying to solve and try to find the most elegant design to make that work, rather than, just, slapping on features upon feature upon feature, and you just end up with this kind of amalgamation of like ball of wax that, it does this and it whistles and it does, well, I didn't want it to whistle. I mean, this is a mouse, right?
That's right.
Kind of a thing. So, I mean, if you're not familiar with IDEO, is very well known. They have a methodology and they've done a lot of they've published a lot of books. If some of you listening are inclined, that are interested in design, I strongly encourage you to go check those out. Check out Frog Design, check out Gray, check out IDEO, read some of their books. You'll be able to get a lot of insights into proper design and design thinking in the sense that we believe in, not in the stuff that is being marketed. I think today.
Well, let's actually drill down into design thinking, because design thinking, you mentioned IDEO, Stanford D School is the other entity that's well known for sort of pushing that out into the world. And I think that design thinking has received quite a lot of press and a lot of attention. And I think of design thinking as the way that a lot of people know about design, in the same way that programming and development methodologies kind of centers around Agile. That it's a slightly different way of thinking, a codified way of thinking that allows certain practitioners, agencies, teams to then say, this is how we do things, to have that kind of framework. And I don't want to throw shade at design thinking, because I think it's a very important concept. However, I do think that it is very overblown in the way that if you just do design thinking, it will solve everything. And the reality is that that's not true.
Right.
It's much like saying, we have this programming problem. Well, if you just approach it in an agile fashion, you'll fix it. Well, kind of.
Not really.
Exactly. But
really.
But in and of itself, I mean, the premise of design thinking is that you're able to narrow down, zoom in on a very specific detail, and then you zoom back out, right? You have this like flare and focus concept within design thinking. So I firmly believe that that is correct. I think some of the pieces where design thinking can stumble over its own feet is this notion that anyone can design think. And to an extent, that's true. Anyone can do it. However, without the foundation and the background and knowing when to zoom in and when to zoom out, that's when it becomes tricky and hard to calibrate, if you will.
Yeah, I think, in my experience of 35 years, I think good designers are hard to find.
Right. And I'm not saying right because I believe myself to be a good designer.
You're a great designer.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
No, you're a great designer. I remember, we can go back, like my co-founder, Ryan, and I remember we worked with some designers, but they're far and in between. They're not, you cannot really, when you find a good designer, you're like, wow, right? But when there's a lot of people that call themselves designers, right, but then, and we're not faulting anyone, or we're not saying that people are bad, or no, we're just saying that it's just the reality. Right. Good designers are hard to find because I think it's that kind of deeper, like, principle thinking about design and architecture that informs the way they operate. Yeah. And it just really, it shows in everything that they do versus it's an add-on. Like, well, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff here, just kind of throw it all together. Right. And then I'm going to add design thinking it doesn't work.
That's right.
Right. You got to, the whole
design is not decoration in my opinion.
It's not interior decoration. It's actually design. You cannot build a building badly and then bring in an interior decorator to do it and say, okay, that fixed it. Right. Because the bones are going to have problems and foundational issues. And this is what we're saying, is that design is the entire project, not just what wall color do I put in.
So I'll say two things here. Yeah. One is, in the last few years, I have started to introduce myself not just as a designer, but talking about product strategy and design. Because I think it's much more general, and we can talk a little bit about the problem that's happened where design lives inside of product within many teams and many companies. And I do think that there's been a bit of a relegation of the kind of work that design does. Sometimes it lives within technology, but a lot of times within product. So I do think there's something bigger about what design does. And you said the word principle, and this is something that I believe in as well. Yeah. And one person that I always go back to is Dieter Rams, who put forward this idea of 10 principles of good design. I think this was in the 60s or 70s. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head.
A lot of designers came during that era.
For sure. And I think one of the things that I always, and I don't remember all 10 of them, I actually have it on a laptop off the side. I was going to reference it. Maybe we can put it up on the screen. But some of the concepts being less is more. Yeah. Right? Don't add a bunch of features. To your point, you don't need your mouse to whistle. I don't think. So what is the ultimate purpose of the thing that you're trying to make?
That's right.
And then you work around that purpose. One of the ideas that Dieter Rams talks about, and I'm not going to say the German word right, but it's Gestalt engineer, something like that. Yeah. But it's the idea of creative engineering. Yeah. That's the way that he thought about design, about how it's structured in every part of it. And if you go back and you look at those, any of those Braun products that he made, or any of the physical artifacts that he made, I mean, you can also see Apple's early inspiration from them as well. Johnny Ives, I think, also considers Dieter Rams quite the hero.
And so does Steve Jobs.
So did Steve Jobs.
Bibliography, he looked quite a bit.
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting. I'm going to take a detour and then I'm going to come back, because I've been like, in the past, I've been labeled as an Apple fanboy, and having a crush on Steve Jobs and all that. So I kind of had an interesting journey, I think, with that. I still believe in Apple's products. Sure. I think that Apple's products, it's kind of a question mark right now where they're going, because some of the brilliance in engineering and design it's still there, but we're not really sure where they're headed. But anyway, that's not the point. Right. But just for the founders that are watching, I've kind of had a bit of a yo-yo relationship with Apple. I was using an Apple, which is weird for a computer engineer, embedded system designer, talking about like a guy that designs microprocessors. Sure. To be using a Macintosh is kind of like I was a fringe, outcast, when it comes to engineering. But from that moment, I remember, I'll never forget it. It was, I'm gonna go back now in time here, 1991,
Okay.
I think, or 1990 or 1991. The head of the aerospace and mechanical engineering, the team leader on the walking machine project, walked in with a Macintosh Classic.
Okay.
And he walked in with...
Give me a time frame, like what?
1991.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was the single box with the keyboard and the mouse, and he carried it in a little carry-on.
Okay.
This was unheard of, right? And because back then, the machine that I was using, it was called an Osborne. I kid you not, it was like thicker than this table. It was like this big, this high, weighed about 100 pounds, and you carried it with like, your arm is going to fall off by the time. Sorry if anybody's from Osborne. It's a great computer. It did great. I just don't want to get like a bunch of hate mail. But it was a wonderful computer, but it was an engineer's computer.
Sure.
But it was like this wide and this big, and, green screen, and, the keyboard flapped out. Fine.
So this was the era where Mac was still making their chips, right? Their own chips?
So
before they moved to Intel?
So this was in 1990. This was when, 1982 is when Jobs came out with the Macintosh, the original 128K.
Yep.
And then the Apple II started on the decline, and the Macs started picking up.
Yep.
So, and they started printing more and more versions of the Mac. So it was Mac Classic, Mac Color Classic, and all of these. But the point is, we're talking about design and design thinking and principles. He wanted the whole thing contained in a single box that you can carry. Right. The screen was small. So right there, he broke the mold of using this big ass screen.
Sure.
He made it small.
Right.
He's like, okay, you can still get your work done on this small screen because I'm going to give you portability.
Sure.
Because portability is more important for a creative than the size. Right. And when the head of the mechanical aerospace team leader, when he walked in and he put this thing on, I don't know what it was. It was weird. I was just like, I was glued to this thing. And, for, again, a guy that's like, I just like lifted my head up from wires and breadboards and processors and all of that stuff and signals and all of this. And I just like locked onto that thing. And I think I must have worked on it for like 3 hours. I just couldn't let it go.
Okay.
And it just spoke to me.
Right.
So from that moment, I kind of had a connection with Apple because I said, this is how things should look like.
Right.
This is how things should function. It should not be this, archaic black thing that's going to break off my arm. And until this day, you and I always talk about this, even with TCLi, like Sicilians today. It's like, you got to design for humans.
Yeah.
Don't design for engineers, because I love engineers. I'm an engineer, but don't design for engineers, because if you design for engineers, you're going to end up with some weird contraption that you don't know heads or tails from it.
Right.
And that is not for a human.
Right.
So, and I'm going to say that, so back to my earlier point about the yo-yo effect, so I was in love with Apple and Apple products, and I bought all their products.
Right.
I wouldn't call myself a fanboy, but I was a big supporter.
Sure.
But then, Steve Jobs, it's whether you love him or hate him, it's neither here nor there. But what I personally, as a startup founder, where I started, I kind of hated, the whole romanticizing of Jobs and Bezos and whatever, is we were misled as founders. And this is my message to all founders that asked me today after 4 startups, I'm on number 5 now.
Right.
Is that don't over romanticize when you read the bibliography. Oh, I know better than the customer.
Sure.
Guess what? You're not going to know better than the customer, man. If the customer doesn't like it, they're not going to buy it.
That's right.
And your product is going to tank.
That's right.
So you've got to realize that they oversimplified that message that Steve Jobs, he was brilliant. We can't deny he was brilliant. He had issues, and I'm not going to judge, on his issues, socially or whatever, but we're talking about the way his brain functioned to think about how the customer wants to experience the product or the service was brilliant. Right. And the problem is that when you read through these bibliographies, they don't show you all the heartburn or all the failures that he has gone through to get to the point where he had earned the right to define the journey. Right. So if you are a brand new startup that you're just coming out to the market, you're not going to be the one telling the customer how they're going to experience the product.
Right.
Because guess what? I tried it in my first startup, and the market pretty quickly told me, we don't like it, we don't want it, you can have it.
Right.
So the to my point, my disenchantment with this, the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos or whatever, and this is my message to all startup founders, is that you have to be very careful, because you have to mature in the way that you design products and services, and you have to be smart to be testing with the market.
Yeah.
Let the market tell you what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
And when you make millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, and you've earned the right, like Steve Jobs, to define the journey and define the product, fine.
Sure.
But that's not in the beginning, and that's where the failure that I made, because I refused to listen to anyone.
Right.
During my first startup, I thought I knew better than anybody else.
Right.
So anyway, sorry, we kind of diverted. We took off on a tangent.
Well, I want to say more about, so one of the points that you were making is around this idea that what is our focus? What is the thing that we're working towards, to have that laser focus? And I don't remember which one of Dieter Rams' principles this aligns to, but that idea of less is more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So focus on, pare it down, because the thing is that it's very challenging to focus on more than one thing at a time.
That's right.
And the analogy that I use is actually to do with photography. And if you have a photograph where everything's in focus, like you have a scene and everything's in focus, it's very hard to know what to look at.
That's right.
And so the way that I usually think of like one of these really big photographs is like those big class photos where there's hundreds of people and they're all on bleachers or some sort of stand. And in order to find someone, you have to go all the way down the line, and it takes, usually a couple minutes if you don't know what part of the photograph they're already in. So that photograph in some way is unremarkable.
That's right.
Because you're trying to capture everyone. So in the same way, if you're trying to capture 2 or 3 or 17 different things, you're not going to be able to do those things very well. But if you focus on one thing at a time, and maybe do them in sequence, or find ways to parlay them to other people so they can be done concurrently, that's one way you can accomplish multiple things.
That's right.
And I want to link this to the age in which we live in right now. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about AI.
Of course.
How AI is factoring into all of the different kinds of work that we're doing. And I think there are a few different factors. Number one, AI is an incredible tool. Full stop. However, I also think that a lot of companies are making certain bets on AI that it will succeed. They have put in so much money, material investment, human investment, to the point where there are some who need the AI bet to pay off.
Right.
So that's a tricky, there's no margin for error. So the only path is AI. Now, I say that, and I also use AI in my own processes in order to ideate, especially if I'm working on something solo and I don't have the benefit of being able to go to someone and elicit some sort of feedback or something like that. And that's true for writing. That's true for image generation. I've done things where I've dropped into Claude as the AI tool that I use, the large language model. And sometimes I will put in a basic design that I'm working on, headline, subhead, structure, and I'll have it be a critic for me and say, tell me how this is not structured in a way. So I'm almost sparring with AI.
Yeah.
So there are some really, I think, dynamic and useful use cases for AI, but I also want to be careful that we're not romanticizing, much in the same way that many people have romanticized, oh, well, design, you can pick all the colors and you can pick the textures and you can pick this and you can pick that. And that is 100% true. However, if you see an actual design where it doesn't have a unifying point and it's 17 different textures, I don't know why I keep saying the number 17, but 7 different textures, multiple colors, multiple layers, unless there's a theme or a purpose or a goal, that is going to fail, whether it's a piece of business design or it's a piece of artwork, it's just going to fail, right?
So on the topic of color
Yeah.
and texture, etc., what would you say had influenced you as a designer? Like if you were to kind of like look back at whether it was things that you've researched or certain eras that have influenced you, what would you say was the thing that got you to? Because at the end of the day, we cannot take the color out of design or the texture or the material. I mean, it is a part of and parcel of what we do.
Yeah.
So what would you say were the big influencers for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And you and I have had a couple conversations that dance around this.
But we haven't.
I think, had a very direct conversation. I started on this topic of color and tone and approach and palette, actually based on something that you were saying to me. You were expressing to me how much you love Art Deco.
That's right.
And one of your favorite movies is Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby, right.
I do not share that opinion.
Sure.
However, that made me think about what are the things that I align to as a designer? Right. What are the types of movies and books and other kinds of things? So you asked a question about color. And what I would say is that there are certain aesthetics that I am personally drawn to. And, today while we're recording this conversation, I'm wearing a black t-shirt. And if you were to talk to my wife and child, they would tell you that I have a whole closet full of black t-shirts.
Sure.
And my
but see, this is why you're the eccentric designer, right?
Well, because
it's your use of monotone, gray, black. I mean, that's your brand, right? And I think a lot of the a lot of the great designers kind of think in those terms because, correct me if I'm wrong, simplification.
It's a simplification. So that's just a lifestyle choice that I make in terms of being able to pluck something off of the shelf. However, the thing that I would add to that is that black or white or neutrals can be a base for other things.
Right.
And one of my best friends actually came to me and said, I know your favorite color is black. And I said, no, my favorite color is not black. And they say, well, you always wear black. Like that's all you wear.
Right.
And I said, well, it's not my favorite color. That's just the one that's most useful to me.
Right.
So I think that one of the things that I have determined in the work that I do is that there's usefulness and utility that's separate from taste.
I like that.
So green is actually my favorite color, by the way.
I love it. Green is our favorite color too.
Yeah. I noticed when I first looked at the colors for TCLi.
Yeah, that's right.
That green was the primary color. And I kept it because
it was your favorite color.
Well, I think I heard Ryan say something about that. And so I didn't have any point of view to march forward in another way.
So back to the question, like what would you say were your biggest influencers then? What era, what movement, what, I mean, I don't know if you can you
I don't know that I tie to a very specific era. I did reflect off of the Great Gatsby question that you asked me, and I started thinking about my favorite movies, and I think my favorite movies are futuristic steampunk movies.
Okay.
So things like the original Blade Runner, Dark City, which unfortunately came out the same year that The Matrix came out.
Okay.
So any other sci-fi movie that came out the year that
didn't make it.
It didn't make it. Right. So I think these kind of like dark sci-fi, maybe even psychological style things. Those are the things that speak to me. In terms of books that I love, my book range is varied. But if I had to pick my favorite book, it would be Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club.
Nice.
I mean, as a debut novel, it's probably the best book I've ever read.
We're going to have to add this to the book club, and we're going to have to read it. I haven't read it. But I heard you talk about it before. So I'd like to read it.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. So I'll tell you my journey. Then I'm interested in your introspection or your kind of lens on it.
Yeah.
Anyone that knows me, you guys know I obsess about things. It's just the way I am. And I'm definitely, for those of you that don't know me, I'm definitely expressive. So I'm more colors for sure. From a designer, if I can call myself a designer, from a designer standpoint, I'm definitely outspoken. Colors and just like explosion of colors, etc. That's just what gets me going. But I'm trying to remember, like, I think where so I've always had, being an engineer, you're always kind of labeled as a, oh, just, shut up and sit down. You have nothing to do with creative, don't, whatever.
Yeah.
But ever since being a child, I've always had an artistic streak. My mother's an artist. My aunt is an artist. I think a lot of my aunts, from my mother's side, they painted, and even my father's side, my aunts also, they either painted, they were like awesome painters, or they just had really a big artistic, they sang, they just very poets. So I definitely.
Well, how did that play into then the high achieving mindset?
They're from Middle Eastern origin, man.
Okay.
Doctor, lawyer wasn't even in the picture. It was like doctor, engineer, or some other thing.
So lawyer plus poet, like that's what the expectation, like.
It was, well, for my parents, my dad, God rest his soul, was a Arabic. So he was an Arabic teacher.
Okay.
He was a poet, and he was a headmaster.
Okay.
And imagine the deadly combo. My mother was a headmaster too.
Sure.
Talk about being in a household with two headmasters. Oh my God, man.
Sure.
Talk about expectations.
The bar is high.
Anyway, but so going into engineering, and then just in general in the 80s, like mid 80s, etc., when I went to college, engineers were just like they're in the basement cooking up something or whatever.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with design and color, and
sure.
So it was kind of dormant. And
right.
I think that glimmer of design kind of cropped up when I saw that Mac, because I just instant connection.
Right.
And everybody was looking at me, was like, well, why are you so drawn to this? Like, I don't know. I love it. I think it's awesome.
It's like a magnet.
It's like a magnet.
Yeah.
But I think it might have been photography, because I always wanted. So it's photography and audio, hi-fi, that I love music, and I love sound, and I love the change in sound signatures based on the equipment that you use. So my interests are varied, and they go across discipline.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I used to fight it and kind of like actually try to quiet it down. But as I got older, I said, no, it should be the intersection of all of these things.
Sure.
To really be able to bring something unique to the world. You got to bring an intersection of all these things. So I think it was photography that led me into understanding, like, everything around aperture. And I geeked out over that for like 2 years. I did nothing but photography, like day and night. And then this led to that and led to that. And then I think I talked to you about, I got into like mid-century, all the mid-century furniture, and I geeked out over that. Bauhaus, the Bauhaus movement was huge for me. For those of you that don't know what that is, go look it up. It's amazing. It's basically the transition in Europe from the traditional Victorian style buildings and furniture and everything to the modern furniture, the modern and abstract, what we see today as modern, furniture.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, and it's like just to kind of reflect back on this, it was Walter Gropius, the German designer that founded the Bauhaus. It was so taboo for them to go do this that they actually were fought by the government. Yeah. And eventually, I think they shut down the institute. And I went down a rabbit hole with the Bauhaus. I got their books, I got their all their literature, I got their curriculum. I really got into it, and it was super cool because they were talked about the intersections of material, color, texture. Yep. They looked at how do they bring the physical, the things that are in the physical world, how do they bring it together to create something where form follows function? Yep. It's one of their big things. Yep. And some of the great pieces of furniture that we still see until today, like the Eames chair, came from the Bauhaus
for sure.
School of Design. So anyway, I don't want to continue on this. There's a whole lot more, but we'll just stop there. So it was that mid-century Charles and Ray Eames, mid-century furniture, the Art Deco movement, and then the Bauhaus School that really got me to start really, kind of dialing in that critical eye for detail and simplification, I guess. anyway, it's kind of interesting.
Well, I want to riff off something that you were saying around the importance of the intersection of these modalities.
Right.
So music, that's something that plays a really important part in my life. I don't play musical instruments very well. Some others in my family do, but I don't. But I love listening to music.
Right.
So any number of musical acts, bands, etc. But then also like how that intersects with the visual layer. And I think that that's what, when I was thinking about my work in theater, is that I could do all of those things.
Right.
Almost every single thing that I've ever written creatively has had some sort of musical anchor. So it used to be whenever I would write, whether it's a short 3 or 10 minute play or even a full length play, there would always be a song that anchored it. Didn't ever have to play inside of the play because of royalty reasons and things like that. But it was always an inspiration point.
That's nice. Yeah.
So I think that when it goes back to that idea of what is the goal, what is the purpose, what is the underlying structure that this needs to live on top of? And whether we're talking about information architecture or a kind of verbal taxonomy, or we're talking about a color palette that needs to be really strong, or whatever the aligning principle is, I think it's always important to come back to that idea. What is the root of this?
Right.
And I think this can map to all sorts of frameworks. One that comes to mind is the 5 whys.
Right.
When you come upon a problem and you interrogate it, and I think it was developed as part of the Toyota method,
right.
And you ask why 5 times or more or less, but at some point when you run out of answers, that's the core problem that you're looking to solve.
Right.
What is the underlying piece?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that, a lot of and I believe you'll echo this, that a lot of the kind of like the design, the thinking about design and principles or whatever, it's all about having that better outcome at the end for the person that is used. It's not about you, and it's not about the colors you like, and it's not about the function. It's really about the person that's going to be using that product or service.
That's right.
And being able to bring that in the best way possible for them. Another, and I'm interested, have you read The Design of Everyday Things? I'm sure you have.
Yep.
Don Norman.
Don Norman, yep.
A good friend of mine.
It's got that great sort of like teapot where the handle's on the other side with the... and I'm sure someone thought that was a good idea, but it doesn't seem to...
So for those of you also that are interested in design, please read the book.
Yeah.
It's a great book. It's a great read. And if you're an aspiring designer or a designer that hasn't read the book, do yourself a favor and read it. This book talks about a lot of the things that we've been kind of discussing. It really brings it to life, to where Don Norman, and he came up with a term called the Norman doors, where, for example, you step in front of a door and you don't know how to open it. It doesn't have a sign on it.
That's right.
It doesn't have a handle.
No push,
you don't know whether to push or to pull.
Right.
So it became kind of I think in the design world, it kind of became a thing that we go to say, well, this is a Norman door, because you don't know how to use it. And and I think this is where the Steve Jobs and the Jeff Bezos, the Amazon, and the people, the good designers of products start intersecting with these ideas, is that at the end of the day, you got to design something intuitive.
Right.
And your job as a designer or as an architect is to say, how can I make this so simple that the customer, the user, doesn't have a problem, doesn't need a manual.
Right.
It doesn't need like this thick manual, like back in the 50s and the 60s. They used to send the products with a big, thick manual that you got to go through. It was written by an engineer. You got to have an engineering degree to understand it.
Yeah.
And the premise of the book, and I still remember it clearly because it rings true until today, people hate to feel stupid.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Right? And the design of everyday things talk about things that are designed that make people feel stupid because they were designed by an engineer, are highly unlikely. The majority of their functions are not going to be used, because people feel alienated from, the user feels alienated from this product, versus being, like, for example, the example with the Mac, constantly, immediately, instantly drawn to the product, because everything was thought about for the user, how can I make it so simple that it's not, I don't need a manual, it's intuitive. They know how to use it.
Right.
So that book, it was like...
well, and I think one of the examples from that book, I think it's Design of Everyday Things, that he talks about where there are two sidewalks that meet at a certain area, and the sidewalks have been designed such that, you know, people walk here and then they walk here, they make a turn, but there's a patch of grass that's right here. And so over time, what starts to happen is that people don't walk all the way the full length of the sidewalk and then turn. They start cutting across the grass. So you start noticing these cut acrosses, and as the indentations are more pronounced in the grass, then more people take it. Right? Because it's the design that people have made.
That's right.
So I think it's about paying attention to that. And then the second thing that I was thinking about actually had to do with the idea of not just everyday things. Well, I guess these are everyday things, but we live so much of our lives now on our phones and our computers.
That's right.
So we go to websites, we have apps, we have all sorts of digital paradigms, digital interfaces that we need to be aware of. So when you go to a website, now assuming for some reason it's popped up and maybe you didn't type it in, you need to understand very quickly what you're doing there, what the place is and what you're doing there. Right. And especially because so many websites, interfaces, experiences, and services have begun to resemble each other. You walk into a building and you think, am I in a hotel or am I in an office building?
That's right.
Or is this a retail store? Right. So so you need some sort of aligning characteristic. So I think it's really important to be clear to any customer or user around what is it that I'm meant to do here. So whether that's a website or that's a chat bot, whether you're inside of an AI paradigm, how do I orient myself to do the thing that I need to do?
That's right. It's interesting you said that because going back to Steve Jobs, I think one of the campuses he built, he did not do any, like on the inside of the campus, he just put a patch of grass. He didn't actually put, if I recall, he didn't actually put any walkways. He waited 6 months to see the paths. Then they cemented them.
I don't think I heard the story.
Because he wanted to see which paths people take, let the user define what they want. And then they actually put down I'm like, that's brilliant. Instead of me trying to figure out what to do, like, you know.
These crazy patterns. Who walks this sidewalk?
But exactly. So like, as you said, it's funny that you're talking about that because you probably find more people walking on this than that. And it tells you, guess what? Your users don't like this. They're like this, right?
Even to the point, if you put bushes in a place or you put benches or you put very specific, not just sidewalks and say, this is where you walk, but even if you put up barriers, people will still find a way to get around it.
That's right.
So
and it's interesting when, and I've witnessed this, I'm not going to say where, it's interesting when the user actually retaliates against the design. And then instead of somebody having, and I think this is what, it's really, we're kind of getting to the root of why Skipper and TCLi in a way, because instead of the designer or the provider saying, wait a minute, they hate it, we got to fix it. They actually go and intentionally find a way to block them from doing the thing that they found easier than the way that it was designed. And it's like, guys, come on. You know, the user is retaliating. I'm sorry, you designed a bad system.
That's right.
Go fix it. And they told you how they want it. So go make it. And then, you know, instead of trying to block them from going this path, go ahead and take that down and cement this path. They're going to go like, oh my God, I love this company. Or I love this designer because they're saying they listen to me versus, no, I'm going to block this. I'm going to put like a bear trap. So if you try to come through here, your leg will get snapped off, you know? Very good. So I think, I mean, that's awesome. Thank you, Skipper, for the background and for the, like that, say.
And I think that this conversation that we're having right now, we could keep having it, but I think we've talk for hours. I think we've hit a good
So now, I mean, I'll tell you before I guess we tell our audience and the people that are interested to understand why TCLi is building a design practice. We wanted to have this introduction. For me, as we move forward as let's say, if I can call myself the visionary for the company, I see us building products and I see us we're doing a lot of it, even for advisory, when we're doing advisory service for our clients, be it law practices or as we move forward into banks or logistics or pharmaceuticals, there are going to be solutions that we have to design for our customers. We are definitely an AI-based company, an AI-first company. We're going to be designing solutions that are going to require design thinking. Like, I shouldn't say design thinking. They're going to require proper design to say, listen, is this the right flow for the customer? And we're not talking about colors and textures. No, we're talking about more basic fundamental things of saying,
no, the overall experience.
Yeah, how does a customer come in?
That's right.
How are they going to interact with this product or service?
That's right.
Is this the best way that they should? What steps are in there, and what should we remove?
That's right.
And where are the points of friction? That is going to be paramount, I think, as we move forward in the world. That as we move from 2025 and beyond, I think the companies that will flourish are the ones that are going to be designing for humans, and they're going to be focused on consumers and users and companies, and designing for people, not designing for corporates, I guess. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'll add two things here. One is, I think the only option is to design for humans, because humans are the only ones that pay. As of right now, computers don't pay anything.
That's right.
Right? Number two, the idea of, so TCLi being a boutique consulting firm, I think there's also an underlying premise that less is more.
That's right.
That it's not about loading up your cart with all of these services and processes that you have to do in order to get to an outcome. It's really about what are the focus things that we should do with our clients, for our clients, in order to get to said outcome. So if it's about setting up a journey map, if it's about going through an exercise where we think about the overall ecosystem, maybe it's something like a day in the life treatment. Like, what is it that we're looking for the impact and outcome that we're looking for?
Yeah.
So I think that's a distinguishing factor in this day and age of not trying to sell you the sun, the moon, and the stars, but say, oh, this is the thing that we need to do, or this is the thing that you want to do. Here are a sequence set of options based on our experience, because we've been part of those bloated teams where too many people trying to do too many things, scope creep, all of those, you end up working, 80, 90 hours a week on a project, and it's just unsustainable.
That's right.
So I think it's about looking at those underlying human principles of how we work, how we can get to that impact, and we can get to it in a quicker way instead of ruminating and kind of getting caught up into yourself.
That's right. And I think where you can actually, for the listeners or for the audience, a case in point where you can actually see this in action is in our academy. So once the way we engaged with Skipper as TCLi was, he was our consultant for the first version of the academy. I knew eventually I was gonna, like, what's the right word? Bamboozle. I'm gonna bamboozle you.
Keep using. Yep.
That's that you're gonna join TCLi eventually. We knew that.
Right.
But Skipper came on board as our consultant to help us kind of design everything, like the journey, the colors, like the whole thing, right? And coming out of that, the feedback that we got, it was positive feedback. It was good. It was sufficient, and people were okay and they were happy. But we started getting feedback, and I personally was not satisfied. But where I knew I was alarmed when Skipper said, "All right, this thing is not that great."
Some platform issues.
It was a platform issue. We don't want to get into the details of what platform, etc. That's not the issue here.
Right.
But then I think for me, the flag went up to say, all right, if a great designer is saying they hate the platform, we got to take a serious look at it.
Right.
And again, in the fine fashion of TCLi, we question everything. Nothing is off the table. We don't want to be pedantic. We're not pedantic, but we're just
not
practical.
Debate for the sake of debate.
Right. We're practical, and we want to have the best journey that we can have for our users.
That's right. So
we set off on a journey of discovery of a better journey, and how can we upgrade the entire journey and make it more. And then we kind of open up the floodgates and say, all right, what are all the ideas? How do we want to do this? Right. How would we change? How would we design this differently? And then everybody contributed, and we came up with, and I know one of the things that I was driving hard for was a community-based. Right. I wanted community-based learning. So it's community-based learning. We need a better platform. We need to have this. We need to have that. and then you could actually experience the new design with MVP2 that's launching in a few days.
That's right.
And you could kind of see some of the things that you could
probably
see
after this is ready. Yep.
Yeah, you could actually see, Skipper and his practice in action throughout the academy now in MVP2, because we applied as much as possible. We applied design thinking to the entire thing. Again, we don't want to use design thinking. We applied design.
Right.
Let's say we applied design.
Right.
In the entire journey. We did a customer journey. We looked at all the steps, and we looked at it from a user perspective.
Right.
We tried to see where the friction points were, and we removed them.
Right.
We streamlined it. We made it very simple to engage, very simple for people to invite their friends and family, and things like that, and their colleague. So you can definitely see that during the. I mean, as you interact with the MVP2, I guess, of our. So I guess, Skipper, kind of like as we're coming to the kind of the end of the end of this video, can you just kind of share with us? And I don't know if you had a chance to formulate enough yet, but what's your vision for what a design practice at TCLi should do or should focus on and do for our customers?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, and this isn't anything that's been codified necessarily, but off the top of my head, I think we can pull some themes of what we've already talked about. Right. Things like less is more. What is the overall goal? What is the focus versus what is, you talked a little bit about the exercise of doing the second MVP for the Academy. There are plenty of things that in that ideation phase of what are the things that we want to do, understanding capabilities, there are plenty of things that are in the parking lot that are for later. They're in the backlog. So that's not to say that you can do everything at once, but it is a matter of prioritization. What is the most important thing given what we know in this moment? So I think as we're talking through this, I wonder if there's a version of Dieter Rams's 10 principles. I think I saw once upon a time that somebody did, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, did like a UX revision of Dieter Rams's principles, but I wonder if it's ripe for another kind of, what does the 2025 version of the 10 principles look like?
I like that.
So I might imagine that TCLi would adopt some of those, if not all of them.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share with the people, kind of as you're embarking on this journey with TCLi now, as we kind of close out the video?
I mean, I think for anybody who's watching, there are digital assets, and we have a website that, like every website, is in process. But I think that articulates a lot of what TCLi at TCLiadvisory.com is about. And I would invite people to go visit and learn more there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, Skipper, thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Really, really enjoyed getting to know you. I thought I knew you. I know you better now. Definitely going to dig more into the New York thing, man. But New York pizza, we got to go out for New York pizza. Is one of your favorites or no?
Sure, but where here?
We'll make it.
Okay,
we'll make it at my house.
Fair.
So thank you very much for joining us for this video where we had the pleasure of talking to Skipper Chong Warson, who's our senior principal for design at TCLi. He's going to be building our design practice. We're for those of you, we'll put some in the description of the video. For those of you that are wondering about TCLi, we are the Consulting Lab Inc. We're an advisory, a boutique consulting firm that focuses on doing assessments and implementations. We lead with AI. We're an AI-based company. We have an academy that focuses on closing the AI literacy gap. Please visit us, engage with us, leave us comments, connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find us on TCLiadvisory.com, and you can also find the academy on TCLiacademy.com. Come see some of the great work that Skipper has done with the academy by seeing the
team.
And the team.
That's right.
You were just cracking the whip. That's the thing. You can visit that website and hopefully join us. There are tiers that are free forever, so you can actually join in and experience the academy as an observer tier, as we call it. But thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you and engaging with you in another video.